Hey everyone, Lonnie here. This week I intend to finish up my TV stand, indoor TV cabinet, however you want to phrase it. Now I will get started on the back and the doors. As you can see from the picture, so far I've had one little alteration from the picture with the top. The doors are going to run down to the bottom plate to just below the top of the lid, or well, tabletop essentially. And they're approximately the same size as the back. So what I'm going to do is start the final part of this process by cutting down some boards to the height of the doors in the back. I rounded it up to 52 centimeters or 20.5 inches. That way I can trim up the ends if I find any defects. Now, I planed down this lumber in front of me. It's 3/4 or 19 millimeters. Now I have a stop set up back here, so I'll just lay my boards here and I'll start cutting them down to size. Now I have my boards cut down to the ideal length. They are a little long, but after glue up, that will allow me a chance to trim them up just a bit. I've got a whole stack ready to go. Now, same as before, when I was making the panels, I need to get one side planed down. That way I can run it across the fence and square up the other side. These boards are short enough, I can use my joiner sled. Now once all the pieces are cut, the edges have been squared up, the first thing I'll do is I'll sort out the pieces for the doors. I'm looking for grain patterns and textures. Now when picking out pieces for the doors, this is where the knots can kind of come into play. I like the design of it. It's in the center of the wood, so it shouldn't interfere with anything I'm doing on the sides. Like this one here, it's got a nasty knot, if you can see it right on the side, but I think I can still make that one work, and I can trim up the back side if need be. I've saved some smaller boards. Some of them have that same speckled pattern as the rest of it. These will be resawed and used for the banding. Now, set up for the resaw, everything is the same thickness, planed at the same time. My handy dandy center binder. That should give me a nice center to line my saw blade up on. Eyeball wise, that looks pretty close. Now the final width is a fat 1/4 inch or 7 mil. But I'm working kind of intermittently, so I've got to take a couple of precautions due to extreme humidity differences here, and this is a soft wood. And I've learned from experience, if you don't work at a decent enough speed, it can actually kind of bend or warp on you. So what I'm going to do, clamp them like this, it helps cut down on the warp. On my larger panels, I've just got my shop weights laid across them to help hold them flat. This evening I'll get in here and I'll get them cut down to their final length, and then I'll start the gluing process. Now I've got everything resawed, cut to its final length. Now I've got to start gluing. My glue table is way too short for this, so what I'm going to do is use a couple of 2x4s and some scrap wood just to make something that is long enough to accommodate it. Now I've got my temporary glue rack assembled. It's much longer than I really need, but it won't hurt nothing. I'm just going to take some paraffin, just a chunk of it right across the top. I'll glue down both sides. That way if there's any squeeze out underneath, it helps cut down on gluing into these. I could put saran wrap over them, but I just don't like doing that. All I'll do is start by just laying the panels up here. Seeing what I like, what I don't like. If there's any abnormalities, something just doesn't join up quite right, Sometimes these knots can give it a real distinctive pattern. So I'll play with this until I got a good pattern. I got my grain going the way I want it, and it fits within the lines, and then I'll just glue it up. All right, I've got the grain pattern I want. I've got decent boards in here. My clamps are laid out and in place. So I will just start turning up the sides I need. I'll just kind of put them in here, line them up. I'll work my way down 3 at a time and then put on my clamps. So everything's glued, the edges are all squared up. Just lay the clamp on. I've got these clamped up. Just as soon as they started to bow, I stopped and eased off of them just a little bit. I can see nice even proportions of squeeze out. I'll probably come back in an hour to make sure it's not glued to the 2x4s, just break it loose a little bit. And then I will probably take a chisel and just ease the glue off there and then sand it. Much like getting the panels done in video 1, this is the same process. I've got my bench dogs up to keep it from sliding. I'll take a chisel, I'll go through and I'll clean up all the squeeze out that's dried. Then I'll use my card scrapers and then I'll come back with a sander. The only difference is I'm going to have very minimal use on the hand plane. This panel is real thin. A little on this side might not seem like much, but if you flip it over and do a little on that side, before you know it, you've got a sheet of paper. So I'm going to get all this prepared, and then we'll get it fitted and probably make the final cut. Now I've got my panel done. If you think I've missed a step, keep in mind this is a 4-part series. Refer back to a TV stand part 1, that'll cover the panels. Now I'm going to lay the whole TV stand up here, lay this on top of it, trace out the sides that need to be trimmed. Now my battery went dead on me yesterday when I was gluing this up. So essentially all I did is I had clamps on the top that pulled it snug, clamps down on the sides just to hold it down, and then some shop weights. Now I got some old towels underneath the shop weights. As I discovered, light color woods pick up stains real easy, and just a little dirt and dust off the floor transfers, so that's the point behind them. So now I'm going to take all this off. Now I'm going to have to use a little wood filler because I didn't quite get my top joint as tight or as secure as I wanted. It's not much of a gap, but it just bothers me. So I'm going to put a little painter's tape on this top portion and this bottom portion really close. Put some wood putty in there, and then remove the tape, let it dry, and then I'll finish kind of working up the back. I'm just going to take the wood putty, squeeze it right in there. The point behind the tape is it really cuts down on the amount of sanding I'll have to do or clean up afterwards. Now once I've worked all the way down, I've got it thinned out, it's kind of mushed into where I want it. I just peel this up. And that gives me a very clean, consistent bead all the way across. It'll have just a little bit of touch up afterwards. It'll make sanding so much easier. Getting ready for the doors. I've got them cut to the height I want. Now I've got to make sure they're the correct width. I made sure beforehand the doors were wide enough or thick enough to accommodate the hinges. But I've got to make sure I accommodate them on the project. Hinge up. over as far as I can get it that way. I need to make these either 34 centimeters or about 13.5 inches. Now I'm going to start piecing together the doors. First thing I do is I lay out how I want the boards or the grain patterns to look. Now I've got it marked on this table. Right here's the distance I need to be with it. I'm about a half an inch or 2 centimeters thereabouts from being where I want it. My length has already been established, so now I've got to shave a little bit off of every board until I get the desired width I need. Now after one pass, I'm just about there, and that's all I did was take just enough off, about a saw curve or a little more off every board. So now I will do my least attractive boards, probably the first one and the third one in, and measure it again, taking about the same width off. Boards lined up, I'm right at 34 actually centimeters, or just a hair under 13.5 inches. If you can see it. Right here where my tape is, I'm just a little shy, but I wanted to kind of keep a nice even pattern. So that's very acceptable. This is going to be the bottom to keep myself straight. I'm just going to number them. 1, 2, 3, and 4. That'll help me keep everything in the order I want. And I know this side goes up. Now we're coming in on the home stretch of this, and you've got to constantly look at the picture you're trying to build from when you do this. I've had to change a little detail with some of the trim. Now I'm going to possibly make some changes on the door. If you look at the picture, you'll see here on the door there's a gap between every board. It looks like the bats or braces are the things that actually hold everything together. To create this look, I'm going to simply bevel the inside edges of every board and glue probably about half the thickness down below where no one can see it. Simple block plane. And a little device, I think it's called a bird's mouth. Just lay that in there. Be real careful with the outside edges. Run the block plane down until I get what I think is a decent enough bevel, and then move on to the next one. Now you can't really see it too good yet, but you can probably see just a little more of a gap than there was. Once this is stained and has some color to it, that will really make it pop out. Now I left the sides alone because this board is just thick enough to accommodate my hinges, and I don't want to round off those edges. So now I'll get everything ready and I'll glue up this panel. I have bar clamps ready, glue racks ready. All my numbers are down at one end, facing the right direction. I'm going to begin gluing this up. I see just little fine amounts of squeeze out. It's not consistently across the top, like a little right there. I'll let this dry now. Now, while this door is drying, I'll probably go ahead and do some sanding on the main part of the stand itself. As soon as it sets for about an hour or two, I'll do the other door, and then we'll start on the batting. Now, I've got my doors mostly done. They still haven't had enough time to fully cure out on the glue. I'm going to go ahead and sand them, because once I get the bats on here, it'll be a challenge. So I'll get the fronts done. The backs, I've done cleaned up some of the squeeze out, but later on, when everything's dry, I can go ahead and give them a thorough sanding and cleaning. Now I've got both my door panels done. I'm going to go ahead and sand them down to the texture I want, because once I start gluing my bats on, or trim, or whatever you want to call it, it'll be kind of hard to work inside it. I'm not going to recess them, I'm just going to glue them straight to the surface. Now the backs, the squeeze out was, I've cleaned a little of it up. It hasn't fully cured out yet, but I'm going to finish that later on, probably after I have the bats glued down. Now once I've got the panels sanded down to suit me, I began cutting out my bats. What I did is I went through what wood I had, because I cut plenty of these at a 1/4 inch or 7 millimeters, and I found the ones that were patinaed to match the rest of the stand. And I just kind of laid them out how I want. All right, I've got my pieces cut, kind of fitted and positioned the way I want them. So now I'm going to take my scribe or marking gauge, flip it over to the back side. What I'm going to do when I apply my glue is I'm not going to go over that line. That way when I go to apply pressure to it, I should have minimal squeeze out. And I'll do this to all 4 of these. Pretty much just center this in the strongest place. These bats are 1.5 inches wide or 38 or 39 millimeters. The spacers I'm using for my distance are 2 inches or about 51 mil. I'm just going to put them on, flip these over, try to keep my glue right between those lines when I spread it out. I got them down. I'll gently remove my spacers. Lay my next board door right on top. Same process. Try not to cause any movement to the ones underneath of it. Now if you can see, here's where soda straw, I've got a little squeeze out that happened right here. None other that I see. Sides I don't care about. I'm just hoping there's not much on the bottom board, but I'll now give this about an hour to dry, and we'll work on the cross sections. Right here before I forget, when I was first putting this design together in my head, I didn't have any of this trim around the top. Now I intend to have little magnetic door latches on the inside. When I brought this trim down, it created a cavity in there where I couldn't attach one. So I've simply got a short board, evens out where it's flush with this trim, where I can put one of those little door magnets on there. And that's it, really. Now that an hour has passed, these bats are in place really good. Fortunately, they only squeeze out, although maybe one little drop there was on the top one. So that keeps clamp to a minimum. Now I've got my numbered ends down here. I've got my patinaed boards here towards the center. I'm going to try keeping them in the position that they're going on the cabinets. That way I can kind of keep a uniform pattern going. 2 pieces I'm going to use on the top are going to end up going upwards towards the cabinet. I'm going to position them as such. Just line that up close as I can. Mark across there, hold it in place, and come down here, same thing. And I'll cut on the waist side. Have my bench loop in place. I'll position this in here. This is where a hold fast would come in real handy. Got a little paraffin on the blade. Alright, so I'll go ahead, cut the other one, try to get them as close as I can on spacing at the end. Sand off the pencil marks, then I'll glue these on. Now I kind of changed the direction they fit in here because they just fit better going the other way. Now keep in mind these are not for actual strength, they're just decorations. So if you're a little off, just split the difference. Make sure it's one point. They match up pretty close. If it bothers you too bad, add a little wood filler in there. This is what I came up with for putting pressure on the bat. I'll probably do exactly the same thing with the other side. I'll just show you how I'm going to split the sections, pretty much the same as the first. And we'll go from there. And I've got these glued in, got a little squeeze out there. Don't see much anywhere else. I'm going to start this one. Dang it. Knock it off, Stanley! Now I've got the center bats glued in. They've set for about an hour now. Now I've got this little board here I use as a spacer. So essentially I'll start it about the same way, and I'll just have to guess where it's going to line up on the bottom over here. I'll actually cut this first, then try to line everything up down here and make my next cut. Position it about the same distance as the big side. Holding it in place, I'll work my way down and cut this section next. Just if I keep it held steady. That matches up there. I'm going to have to do some filling in, but apparently I can cut a curved angle on a short piece of wood. For the bottom, I've got that marked right there. Go straight across. Should intersect that right there. Cut that one, get it fitted. That should be pretty much in line up here. Cut these off and hope for the best. Alright, I'll cut the other side. I'll glue these in, give it another hour, and then I'm going to have some cracks to fill on this. But I've got my bottoms even, my tops even. Alright, there they are. All the pieces kind of fit, and they're pretty close to identical. I mean, not perfectly symmetrical. So I'll go ahead and get these glued in like before. In about an hour, I'll tape off some areas and add some wood putty to any of my gaps. And just like before, I'll put some painter's tape down. It helps cut down the cleanup. You can see I got a little better as I went along. The second one turned out so much better. Some of these cracks really aren't all that bad, but they're going to bug me. Right back through, peel off the tape. And let that dry. Now before I forget and stay in the back, I've got to have access holes drilled in the back. I'll come back through. That way I don't blow this hole out too bad. And then I'll sand everything. Now I like to start my projects, especially this big, upside down. I'll start on the bottom. That way if there's a problem with the stain, I can change stains and nobody should see it. Wipe on poly is regular poly, mixed about half and half with mineral spirits. Good shop lighting. Got the first coat of poly on the stand, got the doors coated. Keep an eye on it for a few minutes, make sure I have no drips. Then I'll probably give it an hour or two and then decide how many more coats from there. All right, when your urethane finally dries, you're finally ready to put on some hardware. When you're happy with it, we're in place and just take it all, find your center. Paraffin on the screw head will help it turn in there a little better. What I'm doing is the hinge joint is lining up with the bat on both of these. Much like the handle, I'm just going to take it all, make a mark, close to center as I can. And you put the hinges on pretty much the exact same way as you do the handles. Spacer comes in handy. And there it is, completed project, a good month in the works. I spent mornings before work, evenings after work, and most of my weekends. And one thing I did miss, I got a little excited to be this close to being done. These little magnetic clips is the only step I forgot. I salvaged them off the old entertainment center. But for the most part, I believe it's pretty close, if not slightly better than the thing my wife found on the internet. Am I satisfied with it? Yes. Is it perfect? No. But woodworking, like any other hobby or project, will get better as you practice. This isn't my first large project, it won't be my last. I learned from any mistakes I made this time, and I'll try to correct them on my next project. All you've got to remember is you've got to get started in order to finish. Your shop, your rules. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to stick with me. Ask that you like and subscribe. Thank you. Hey everyone, Lonnie here. This week I intend to finish up my TV stand, indoor TV cabinet, however you want to phrase it. Now I will get started on the back and the doors. As you can see from the picture, so far I've had one little alteration from the picture with the top. The doors are going to run down to the bottom plate to just below the top of the lid, or well, tabletop essentially. And they're approximately the same size as the back. So what I'm going to do is start the final part of this process by cutting down some boards to the height of the doors in the back. I rounded it up to 52 centimeters or 20.5 inches. That way I can trim up the ends if I find any defects. Now, if I plane down this lumber in front of me, it's 3/4 or 19 millimeters. Now I have the stop set up back here, so I'll just lay my boards here and I'll start cutting them down to size. Now I have my boards cut down to the ideal length. They are a little long, but after glue up, that will allow me a chance to trim them up just a bit. I've got a whole stack ready to go. Now, same as before, when I was making the panels, I need to get one side planed down. That way I can run it across the fence and square up the other side. These boards are short enough, I can use my joiner sled. Now once all the pieces are cut, the edges have been squared up. The first thing I'll do is I'll sort out the pieces for the doors. I'm looking for grain patterns and textures. Now when picking out pieces for the doors, this is where the knots can kind of come into play. I like the design of it. It's in the center of the wood, so it shouldn't interfere with anything I'm doing on the sides. Like this one here, it's got a nasty knot, if you can see it right on the side. But I think I can still make that one work, and I can trim up the back side if need be. I've saved some smaller boards. Some of them have that same speckled pattern as the rest of it. These will be resawed and used for the banding.